My name is Hannah and I'm a teacher from Twinkl. Thanks for joining me for daily reading. This is the third in a series of 5 videos. We've been reading Sabryna and the River Spirit. If you've been reading along with me, pause the video here and try and tell someone, have a think, or even write down what you can remember about the story so far. Well done. So far in the story, we've met Sabryna, who lived in a small village at the top of a river up in the mountains. She was visited by the river spirit Dia, who told her that the people were polluting the river, and Sabryna was given the task of sending a message to all of them. Sabryna has since met some people building factories by the river who don't care about the oils and chemicals going into the river. She's also met fisher folk who are taking too many fish and don't want to stop in case their livelihoods are destroyed. Let's find out what's about to happen next. Today, while we're reading, we're going to be thinking about how people in the story are feeling and how we can use clues to work that out. By the next morning, Pa was very tired and full of aches and pains. Sabryna used a silver coin to pay for a ride on a cart. Their funds, which had once seemed like riches, were nearly gone. Sabryna hadn't realized that a bed to sleep in and a few meals a day could cost so much. They rode alongside the river, watching trading boats churn up and down until they reached the city, where the river spilled out into the sea. The city was bigger and busier than anywhere Sabryna had ever seen. There were streets full of shops selling shiny wards, ingenious gadgets and pungent potions. Lowly folk in ragged clothes mingled with rich people in silks and jewels. The beach was alive with holiday makers in their best clothes, flying kites and clutching ice creams. Silver great gulls swooped over the choppy waves, diving to collect scraps. Sticking out into the bay was a glittering pier, lined with stalls and theatres, with a great glass dome at the end. "Isn't it lovely?" exclaimed Sabryna, who had never seen anything so grand. She pulled her father along the bustling pier, past tourists munching on pickled whelks, spice cakes and sherbet, and children waving paper windmills and flags. Sabryna couldn't take her eyes off the bright tents and lighted stalls, which contained every sort of amusement, fortune-tellers and puppet shows, trials of strength and games of luck. Inside the great dome was a stage. Sabryna and Pa arrived just in time to watch an alchemist in a purple suit wheel an intricate machine through the curtains, a machine with cogs and pipes that gurgled and fizzed. "Let's watch for a minute," said Sabryna, seating her Pa in one of the spindly chairs. I'm going to pause there. How do you think Sabryna is feeling on this page? Pause the video and write down what you think, or tell someone. Ready? You might have said that Sabryna is feeling excited, interested, or amazed. But what evidence is there to tell you this? How has the author managed to make you think this about Sabryna's feelings? Pause the video again and look for some clues on page 15 that tell you how Sabryna is feeling. The evidence that I've spotted on this page begins here on paragraph 4. Isn't it lovely? The word exclaimed tells us how Sabryna is speaking. Now, you only make an exclamation when you can't help it. It bursts out of you when you exclaim. She also says, "Isn't it lovely?" Sabryna also pulls her father along, which shows that she's impatient. She doesn't want to wait for him. She can't wait to see what's behind all of these stalls. You might also have spotted it says Sabryna couldn't take her eyes off everything. She also, at the very end, asks, "Let's watch for a minute." She wants to stay. She wants to see more. She's eager. Any of those words would have been fine for your answer. Let's carry on. Roll up, get ready to be amazed and astounded by the extraordinary powers of my alchemical creation contraption. The alchemist cranked the handle of his machine. Cogs whirred and pistons hissed. Then from a golden funnel came a puff of smoke and a fluttering shape. It was a butterfly made of twinkling colour. "Ooh," said the audience, enthralled. "Ah." The butterfly flew up into the roof of the dome and faded into nothing. "It may look like magic, but I can assure you that it is not. This, dear friends, is alchemistry." The alchemist cranked the handle again. Out burst a flapping stork, a stalking sphinx, a paddling beakling. More and more alchemical smoke filled the tent. Pa began to cough on the fumes. "Let's leave," he said. Out on the pier he took great gulping breaths. "That's the problem with alchemical machines. They look flashy, but they pump out poison. Besides which, who wants magical birds and butterflies when we could have real ones?" Sabryna shivered. She had been entranced by the machine, but Pa was right. Now, as she looked along the pier, it was no longer glittering and magical. Smog hung in the air. Tissue, wrappers, and ribbons flew into the bay. The seawater was sludgy and brown. The beachgoers were returning home, leaving the sea to clear up their litter. Sabryna let out a sob. "Pa, the city is the worst of all." Pa looked around, a steely glint in his eye. "Then it's where we can make the most difference." And he marched off until they came to the mayor's residence. Stopping there again. Things have certainly changed from the last page to this one. How do you think Sabryna's feeling now? Pause the video and write it down, or tell someone. Next, I'd like you to tell me the clues that the author has hidden on this page to make you think Sabryna feels this way. Pause the video, find them and write them down, or tell someone. Well done. The author has made it really clear on this page that Sabryna is now feeling sad and hopeless. The clues are that Sabryna suddenly shivers. The weather hasn't changed, but something has shaken her up. She then lets out a sob, which you only do if you're very upset, and says, "The city is worst of all." Before we carry on, look at the final paragraph on this page. He marched off until they came to the mayor's residence. What does marched tell you about Pa's feelings? Pause the video to write down your answer. Finished? In this paragraph, Pa has a steely glint in his eye, which suggests that he has an idea. People only march when they have a purpose, a direction, and a mission, like a soldier going into battle. I think that Pa is feeling determined and ready to fight. Let's carry on. Sabryna didn't quite know how Pa did it, but after a few words with the mayor about the huge crowd at the temple and ticket prices and town funds, Sabryna found herself speaking in the town hall to a huge crowd. She threw a pinch of salt for luck and climbed up to the podium. Looking out, Sabryna saw showmen and vendors, fisherfolk and factory owners. She tugged awkwardly at her practical country clothes and felt for the mountain stone in her pocket. Then, with a deep breath, she began. "Do you remember a time when the river was clear? Do you remember when fish were plentiful? When wild flowers grew along the river banks and bushes teemed with birds and insects?" She spoke for a long time. The citizens listened in rapt silence. But then came the questions. "People come from all over to see the pier. What will happen to the city? How will factories export their goods without boats? Tourists are what keep us prosperous. If we tell them off for a few dropped papers and loose ribbons, they won't come." Sabryna tried to answer, but before she could finish, another question came and another, until the whole crowd was talking and no one was listening. Pa's face grew red as he limped up to the podium. "Listen to my daughter," he shouted. "She was visited by the river spirit. If you ignore her, you'll be sorry." But that only whipped the crowd into a frenzy. That night they stayed in a small room in a shabby inn. Their money had nearly run out. "It's useless," Sabryna said, defeated. "We've been everywhere, but no one understands. They're too busy worrying about money." "They're too busy worrying about money to see the bigger picture. Without the river there are no tourists, no merchants, no food, no water. Without the river we'll die." The journey home was long and exhausting, but at last Sabryna and her father reached their little cottage. Pa put the last silver coin away safely for a rainy day. Life went on as normal. The family ate bread and pottage, the children went to school, and Sabryna took baskets of laundry to the river. But as the days passed, the river sank lower and lower. Soon it sank so low that it couldn't be ignored any more. Village folk hardly dared wash for fear of having too little to drink. The Strong Arms crop hadn't come up as well as hoped, even with the new fertilizer, and now the village was eking out what food it had left. Meanwhile, Sabryna's work dried up like the vanishing river. It was hopeless. How could she make a living as a laundress without water to wash clothes in? Each day Sabryna tramped down to the dwindling river in the hope that today it would be a little higher. One morning, when Sabryna reached the riverbank, what she saw stopped her breath. There was no water at all. Dry stones baked in the sun. River weeds lay in crisp brown clumps. Sabryna sank to the dry ground. How long could a village go without water? What would happen to the beetlings, the butterflies, the fish and the gulls? Sabryna's ears strained desperately for twitterings in the sky and scuttlings in the bushes, for any sign of life. But the valley was completely still. Then, with a blink, Sabryna found herself sliding up the loose stones of Deer's Mountain. Though she felt the same sense of urgency to climb, the heavy air seemed to weigh her down. The stream was empty. Sunbeams beat on the back of her neck and sweat beaded her brow. Before her stood the narrow crack in the rock. Steam poured from the fissure, and Deer billowed impossibly onto the mountainside. "They haven't listened," Deer hissed. Her hair moved like hot air. Her gown hung in rags. Her skin had turned pale grey. "I tried to tell them," said Sabryna. "I went all the way to the city, but wherever I went they whispered and laughed and asked impossible questions. They said that they couldn't stop or they'd have no livelihoods. And now... "If they don't stop, they will have nothing," said Deer. Sabryna bit back a sob. "I know. I tried. I don't know what else to do." "But I do," said Deer. Her face turned stormy grey. "I am the spirit of the river. I give humans life. In return you treat my gift like a toy, to be used and discarded." Clouds bloomed above her and swept menacingly down onto the mountain top. A bitter wind whipped at Sabryna's skirt and pulled her hair. The stone under her feet trembled, the sky roared, and Sabryna was engulfed in a great wave of water which rushed down the mountainside. It flooded the villages, inundated the farms, swept away factories, submerged boats, and toppled the pier. Sabryna tingled all over as she found herself waking by the riverbank. Looking around, she saw no flood, only the dry riverbed. Had that been a vision of the future? Would Deer really flood the villages and towns? Heart pounding, Sabryna set off for home at a run. This time she would make them listen. That's the end of chapter 2. Before we go, take a look at this last page and write down all the clues that you can see about how Deer is feeling now. Has she changed since the last time we saw her? Pause the video now. Well done. That's the end of chapter 2. There are more questions and activities that you can do after the video. Just look at the link in the description below to find out what they are. Join me next time for chapter 3. See you then.